Three more star guests line up first on BBC One to talk to Michael Parkinson.
Tonight, three people who are not just very good at what they do, but they're simply the best. Two are dames, but there the similarity ends. One's a superstar of opera, the only woman singer to rival Pavarotti's popularity. She's Dame Kiri Takanawa. The other has been described as the most popular and gifted woman in the world today. Who said so? Well, she did. And who dare argue with Dame Edna Everidge? My first guest is either greatly gifted or totally mad, depending on what you think about men who drive Formula One racing cars for a living. At the age of 26, he's already being hailed as one of the all-time greats. He's a current world champion, but more than that, he's brought controversy and excitement to a sport increasingly dominated by machines rather than men. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, please, Jacques Villeneuve. Welcome. So, at the start of a new season, is it true that all you lot are crazy?
You need a small dose of craziness. That doesn't mean you have to be stupid. You know, you just have to think about the danger you're taking and to judge it.
And what about fear? I mean, do you have to be fearless?
Well, I haven't had fear yet. So if you got fear when you're driving, then there's no way you can drive on the edge, and there's no way you can be fast. So if you're scared, then you should stay at home.
Does anything scare you?
Probably, yeah. I didn't have time to think about it yet, but it will happen one day, I guess.
But what sort of thing would frighten you? I mean, racing cars apart. I mean, are you frightened of heights? Are you frightened of?
No. Maybe things that I can't control that could frighten me a little bit, or I would say to just to lose your own freedom and stuff like that. So it's more on the personal side more than the pure physical risk.
Anything where you have to make a judgment, then a valid judgment, like you have to make in a car, then that you're not frightened of that because you back yourself against the odds.
and you end up thinking that you cannot make a mistake, which is wrong because you do make mistakes. But once you believe in yourself and you're confident, then there's no reason to be afraid.
Now, you mentioned something that interested me there. You mentioned this thing about being on the edge. Now, one hears this term used quite a bit. We use it too, but for different reasons. I mean, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to a racing driver? What's on the edge mean?
When you're on the edge, it means you cannot make a mistake, because if you make a mistake, you're going to pay for it. And the higher the stakes, and the thinner that edge, and the more pleasurable it is. It's like walking on a tight rope. And when that edge is a razor's edge, when it's very, very fine, then that's when it's very pleasurable.
And that's what you live for, that pleasure?
Yeah, just pushing yourself, the excitement that comes with it, and also the competition. So it's not only the edge, it's the competition also.
Of all the human experiences you've had so far in your young life, is that the most pleasurable one?
No, there's a few other ones, but it's not as edgy, yeah.
I wasn't going to get that. They want me to ask you, is it better than sex? But I wouldn't.
Well, in a race car, you never stop thinking, so I guess it's not as good as sex, no.
No, your career's been an interesting one because, as I said, in 2 years you've come to be world champion. But you came across some very good stock because your father was a racing driver, and your father was killed in an accident when you were what, about 10 or 11?
11, yeah.
11. What kind of effect did that have on you as a child, losing your father so young?
Well, it's difficult to say because I was very young and I have very little memories of that time. So I don't know if I put a block on it or not. I have no idea. but in a way it allowed me to become myself. So it was hard, of course it was hard, but then we went to boarding school right after and evolved in a small society in a way, because a boarding school is like a society in itself.
But did you always want to be what your father was? Did you want to be a...
Well, I guess when I was 5, I wanted to be what Daddy was doing, which is, what every kid wants to do. But then when I grew up, when I was in that boarding school, I didn't really even look at the races. I didn't really care. But I knew that one day I would drive race cars and I would race.
And what about your mother? Because she was then, tragically made a widow as a young woman. Here she has a son who now wants to do what her husband and your father did. What was her attitude toward that?
She knew she couldn't stop me. So instead of making it difficult, she helped me as much as she could. Younger, she couldn't really bring me to do go-karts because she wasn't a very good mechanic, so that wouldn't have worked. But the day that the opportunity happened, I was 17, and I had to make a choice in between continuing school or being kicked out of school and racing. She let me take my decision, and I did it. And at that time, I needed a taxi to bring me to all the tracks, and so she was my personal taxi, so that was very good.
Well, let's have a look at you in action. This actually is an extraordinary piece of footage because it shows, going back to the beginning of our interview, where I asked you quite seriously, are racing drivers mad? Because this is a crash that you're involved in. Now, if we look here on this screen, we can see you. Now, you're there circled in white there. You're in the blue car.
Yeah.
Where is this, by the way?
Good question. That's probably Phoenix, Arizona.
Phoenix.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So roll VT now. Let's see what happens. Now, keep an eye on that blue car there.
Yeah, that was the start, so nothing special happened. Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
Watch it in slow motion, though. Watch it in slow motion.
That probably was one of my best crash ever. I'm very proud of that one. Yeah, it was.
That's probably one of your best crashes.
Yeah, it was my second IndyCar race.
Uh-huh.
I had been on ovals the year before in the Formula Atlantics, which is quite a bit slower. And it was very difficult to see the yellow lights on the side of the track. And by the time we got into that corner, I was going to overtake the 2 cars in front of me on the outside. And on the radio, my team told me that the track was yellow, which means there was a crash. So I started braking, and then suddenly I saw this car in the middle of the track, and I had nowhere to go.
Now, what happens then? I mean, then you've got... Now, I don't care how good you aren't going to pull out of that one, are you?
No, there's not much you can do.
I mean, does the light flash before you? Did you?
No, not at all. You feel secure in the car somehow. It's afterwards you think, ooh, this could have hurt. But at the time, all I had time to see was the other guy. He's a Japanese driver. I saw him. I saw him turn around and look at me, and I could imagine his eyes coming out like in cartoons.
As he saw you coming at him.
Yeah.
But nobody was hurt in that.
No, nobody was hurt. So it was a lucky one because I caught him just in between the engine and the monocoque, so it cut the car in half. So it was very lucky.
But I mean, you more than anybody live not with the possibility of death, but knowing that it happened. I mean, it happened to your father. And I'm just fascinated by the sort of psychology of you getting into a racing car and driving.
Yeah, we're not immortals, and it's a natural thing. There's no point to hurry it along, though. So I'm not trying to kill myself either. But whatever I do, it doesn't have to be racing cars. I can be on skis or playing with friends, and there will always be that element of risk and danger, as long as you can control it.
Now, again, I've read something about you where somebody who skis with you says that you're crazy at skiing, that you're on the edge all the time at skiing. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I mean, like how? What do you do?
I don't know. Always faster, always jumping higher, and then at the end of the day, you end up thinking that it's becoming. Maybe a little bit too dangerous. When you're 16, you don't really care. But every year you think, ooh, that could have hurt. And this year, for the first time, I woke up in the hospital. So that's not very good for pride.
Now, what about the coming season? I said it starts next week in Melbourne, in Australia. And there are new regulations involved this year to basically to slow the cars down because of the fear that they're going too quick. Mm-hmm. What's your view on this? Is it taking the danger out of the sport?
It's not taking the danger out of the sport. It's not going to be safer because we're going to go a little bit slower, that's true, but it's easier to go off. So you'll have more people going off, so there's more chance of hurting yourself. And the thing is with those grooved tires, when you're spinning on the asphalt, they don't slow you down as much. So it's not really going to help the safety. The other thing is it's going to hurt the racing a little bit, I reckon, because now we become more dependent on downforce as we lost mechanical grip.
Which means what?
Downforce is the wings, which is...
Did you see that look into my eyes? That's a...
Yeah. I thought you would have, read a little bit before tonight.
Oh, well, I read a manual about motor car preparation before I came home. But you're quite right, I should have done. But let's go back to the coming season, because what I do know, and I know enough about, I mean, I'm like most people, I watch Formula One racing, and I'm intrigued by the people. Now, what about you and Mr. Schumacher? Mm-hmm. Of course, you had a bit of a dust-up last season, didn't you? And he seems to be the kind of guy who courts kind of controversy. I mean, he seems to get his fellow drivers at times into trouble.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of controversies when he was fighting against Damon Hill in 94, 95. But then he wasn't doing it directly with me last year. He was using Irvine to do that instead. So he was clean and out of it. But then at the last race it happened. And in the end it didn't hurt me, it hurt himself, because I ended up winning. So he only helped my cause.
It was deliberate, was it?
You want me to tell you what I really think?
Yes,
yeah?
please.
Well, yes, it was. The first reaction you have is to avoid an accident.
Yes.
And before a race, you think about all those things, and you end up thinking, if I'm in the situation, should I take him off and keep the big lead, which is what we had discussed in Suzuka, which is the race before that when I had a 9-point lead. And of course, you think about it and you discuss it. And then when you have the opportunity to do it, you either do it or you don't. And in Suzuka, I could have done it, and I just couldn't, because then you have to go to bed, knowing you've done that, which I guess is easier if there's no camera following you. But when you're fighting for the championship, you know that all the cameras will be on you the whole time. So, and for 2 weeks before the race, I had spent every day, telling the media and everybody that Michael had done it before, and there was a good chance of him doing it again, just so it would keep him away from doing it. And in the end, he still did it.
Well, I wish you luck in the coming season. Does it feel different being world champion?
Yes, because there's less pressure to prove that you can do it.
Yes.
Now it's more a question of doing it again. So it's in a different kind of pressure.
And how many more times do you want to do it?
Well, as long as I'm hungry, and I'm very, very hungry now, and as long as we keep winning, there's a few guys that have won a lot. So right now I won only one, and we'll try to win a second one and then see how it goes.
And you're going, of course, to Melbourne, as I said. You're flying off on the weekend. And have you ever come across, while you've been out there, the most famous Australian of all? Well, possibly the most famous Australian in the world. Well, certainly the most famous person in the world, Dame Edna. Have you ever met her?
Who?
Jacques Villeneuve, thank you. Well, it's fair to say that if my next guest had learned how to drive a car ever, we might never have heard of Jacques Villeneuve. She's a housewife, megastar, chanteuse, swami, spin doctor, polymath, and icon. She's been described as, and I quote, a fragrant Antipodean dowager, the diva of bad taste, and Australia's revenge for penal colonisation. I could go on, but I won't. Whatever I say, nothing could prepare you for Dame Edna Everage.
I think I'm overdressed, you know. I brought you a little present, Jacques. A comb,
I don't think it's going to be very useful.
He's looking just a little bit windswept. Why not, you angel? Hello, Parky.
Hello, Jack. It's so good to see you again. It's been a long time.
It
actually.
has.
It really has.
Some of our early shows are legendary, aren't they, Michael?
Legendary, yes, sir. I've been taken off them, but you're still there. No, let's catch up now. We've got a lot of catching up to do now.
We have.
Now, what about your manager?
Just rearranging my petals.
Is it any...
We both live in the fast lane, we do.
I can see that, yeah.
Jack, and you're much younger than I remember. I do.
Sorry, I lost
the man who
memory.
discovered Twiggy, do you remember? He discovered Twiggy.
You discovered that's Justin de Villeneuve.
Justin de Villeneuve.
That's not Justin de Villeneuve.
Isn't it?
No.
I thought he discovered Twiggy and then took up racing driving. Sorry.
He'd be a very old racing driver.
He would have. But Justin was Twiggy's manager. Yes. He was. She doesn't speak of him now.
No, she doesn't. Now, talking of managers, what about your manager, Mr. Humphreys? Oh.
I don't speak of him either, I'm afraid. He's... Oh, terrible. You have a manager, I suppose. Watch him like a hawk.
Oh, they're dangerous, huh?
I know, I remember it wasn't that long ago. It's terrible, Michael. Put that up.
What's
I
happened?
trusted that Barry Humphries, and he helped me early in my career. He was a talented but smooth-talking person. And he was wearing a short-sleeved shirt, and I saw these scars on his arm. I thought, oh, he's been doing something a bit silly. And then I realised what had happened. The drawer of the till had slammed on his wrist. He's had his hand in my money. Well, look at the figures yourself, and I advise you too, Michael. Don't trust anyone in the matter of your own money.
Did you sack him? Did you get rid of him?
Well, I didn't. I've retained him. I've got him working for me. He's going to pay back every penny he took from me. I put him into my new show, and I've given him lots of rather demeaning little tasks to do. And I'm going to get every shilling back from that possum I am. You be careful, you know, you don't want to have anything like that. I mean, you think to yourself, when you're going speeding around that racing track, Justin, and you're going around there, and you think this is the major risk. The risk lies elsewhere. The risk is in your emotional life. That's where the big accidents can occur, darling. I adore this little fellow, isn't he lovely? And you know, you've given yourself a bit of a rinse, but it's not effeminate. It isn't. When I learned that Barry Humphries was delving into my finances,
yes,
I had a total emotional collapse.
Yes.
And I had to go, and I went into a place, you know. Oh, yes, I did. And I had to let it all out. I went to Megastars Anonymous. It's something I founded. You almost qualify for it, darling. It's where people who live in they live their lives in a goldfish bowl can go and meet their peers, and it's totally anonymous. I shouldn't have actually mentioned it. And I saw you there the other night, too. I did. Oh, Hillary Clinton was there last night, bless her, and she looked happy. She did. She said, oh, it's a relief, Edna, you know. It is a relief. She said, I never thought I'd say this to you. She said, but I never thought I'd say to another woman, you know, what a relief I found lipstick on his collar last night. She said, that's nice, isn't it? Little Sean Connery there the other night, going on about his knighthood. I've actually never seen Sean flounce before, but he did. And wearing a kilt, you can flounce a bit. After all, he's deserved one. Look at all the work he's done for Scottish independence, trying to get rid of the Queen, and how does she reward him? Not giving him a knighthood. It's unfair. It is unfair. But I mean, I adore... You're from Canada, aren't you?
Correct, yeah.
I adore it. Have you been there?
No, I haven't been to Canada.
Mostly, it's beavers and mounties. Pretty well. And Donald Sutherland. Remember him?
I do remember Donald Sutherland, yes.
Bit of a seminal and pivotal interview with him.
Yes.
Years ago.
Yeah, indeed. I remember that.
That's
yes.
coming back to you.
It is indeed.
I never forget. Don't touch your face. Why? I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that, should I? But you know, since you got rid of your clipboard, you've been fiddling with yourself again. You have. You have, because when you had... Michael, I adore this man, don't get me wrong, viewers and studio audience, and little Justin, but I mean... when he had his clipboard, at least I think a man like you needs a clipboard on your lap because you can rearrange yourself behind it. You can well...
I never thought of that.
No, you haven't got... His clipboard was a focal point for him. And now he hasn't got it, he does a bit of the lobe tugging again. And a little bit of the nostril flicking. I was watching you the other night. Oh, there you go. I was watching you. And you see? And I thought, you know, I thought I never realised you were a mason. I thought you're sending signals, or perhaps you're buying futures, you know, and you're sending little messages buying pork bellies, you know, at the same time as doing the show.
Who was on? Who was my guest?
Look, I loved it because you had Scylla and Lily.
Yeah.
Last week, I adored them. Of course, I'm a big fan, quick-witted and lovely little Lily. And you bring out, you see, you're a master, you're unique. All the other interviews, done any of the other ones, don't bother. This is the man, because he's polite and he listens. There's a person called Jeremy Isaacs, you know? He hides in the dark, you never see him. That's why I keep mistaking him for Michael Winner whenever I bump into him. He doesn't like that either, I can tell you. But he doesn't listen. You know, you could tell him you were a serial killer and he'd say, and what are your plans for the future? You know, he's not listening. Now, he could do with a clipboard. He relies on the clipboard and not his ears as you do. And little Scylla, he brings things out of people, you know. I admired Scylla for years, but I didn't realise that she came from humble origins. I didn't realise that. No. Or that she had a rudimentary education. I didn't know that. And another thing, she was so nice, wasn't she? Wasn't she gorgeous and lovely? Yes. And you brought that out because I know people who've worked with her for years and they've never mentioned that. Never! They've never mentioned that side of you, Scylla.
I tell you what we should do, actually. We should talk a little bit about the new show you're coming to, and also I should ask you about...
my new show, you've got to come. I'll give you some tickets.
She doesn't listen much, does she?
Guildford and then Plymouth and then Bradford. Oh. And, you touched your nose again. And then, because you're worried about the time, but then the Haymarket in London. And that's all I'll say, but it's a musical and it's based on my life. And it's new and it's exciting and it's makes me a very happy woman.
It makes me happy to see you so happy. But
I'm happy because they're putting me in the Dome.
In the Millennium Dome?
In the Dome. Mr. Mandelson is a friend of my son Kenny, and they've got together.
Kenny's gay, isn't he?
He's what?
Gay.
Horrible thing to say.
I thought he was.
I'm sorry. Why can't you call my son and his friend Clifford by what they are?
What are they?
Flatmates. Flatmates. But they've got this figure in the Dome. It's sexless, isn't it? Asexual. Isn't that stupid? Ever heard of anything more ridiculous? I mean, you can enter it, can't you, presumably?
Yes.
I mean, 50%. I mean, who wants to enter something when you don't quite know what it is? I suppose it'll have a couple of entrances. It'll appeal to everybody. And there'll be a ramp for the disabled, won't there? But I mean, where's that going?
I don't know. Now, what I meant to say to you as well, of course, was, and inquire about, was Madge. I know that...
Madge?
Yes, Madge, your bridesmaid.
He doesn't want to meet her.
Madge was the bridesmaid at Dame Edna's wedding many, many years ago, and she saw something unutterable at the wedding and has not mentioned a word about it ever since. Not
No,
spoken
she's
ever
silent.
since. She's silent.
She's a New Zealander. Well, she's loitering somewhere. She's probably over there somewhere.
Shall we see it, Madge, shall we?
What?
Shall we bring her on?
Oh, well, if you must, you'll depress people, but still bring her on. I think she must be over here. Madge! They want you on here, darling. Madge! This is Michael Parkinson, an old friend of mine, Madge. This is Madge.
Hello, Madge.
He
Nice
doesn't speak, but I've activated a T-shirt. Listen to this. Listen.
I love you, Parky.
Isn't that nice?
Love you, Parky. Well, that's as close as she gets. Sit down there. And don't look at him in your lustful way. She's undressing him with her eyes. That's what she's doing.
Did I read somewhere that Madge was to be in a movie?
Well, she wanted to be in the Titanic film. Do you know this woman? She's such a fibber. Did you see the Titanic?
Not yet.
No, you need to allow a bit of time to see it. Well, she claims she was on the Titanic. She was.
Ah.
Well, she looks like something you find at the bottom of the sea, doesn't she? Talk about a sunken chest. Poor old Madge.
Oh, she's poor woman. She's very frail, isn't she?
Frail?
Yes.
Strong as an ox.
Is she? Is she?
Press-ups on one arm every morning.
No.
Oh, yes.
No nonsense.
Don't you worry, this minx. She goes out at night raging with other New Zealand women.
Ah.
Oh, yes. And, of course, she's pierced multiply. When there's a high wind, she whistles. She does.
Right, now, shall we bring on? You've mentioned New Zealand quite a few times. Our very special guest tonight, so the well-known New Zealander. I mean, the First Lady of New Zealand, as you are the First Lady of
No
Australia.
question.
No question at all. But in the meantime, may I thank you very much, Dame Edna Everett.
Thank you, Michael!